Guten Morgen. Ja, Unendlichkeit. Ja, da bin ich. Guten Morgen. So, du bist jetzt in der Klasse. Deutschklasse sagt Guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen.
Ja, schön. Heute sprechen wir wieder über die Stadt. And we're going to skim through quite a bit. Usually, you guys, I would have you do a lot more reading of these sections. And it's difficult text, so it takes some time. Most students end up using Google Translate, and then they tell us what they read on Google Translate. So if you don't mind, we're just going to skim through it to save maybe a day of having to read that. So let's look at our notes, and we'll look at the text as well. We're checking out Die Deutschen. Kapitel 1 bis 4. Oops, that's the movie. Here we go. And today we're going to get to two topics. What are the economic life in a medieval city, as well as how the plague starts to impact both economic, social, religious, every aspect of life. So let's get into it. We've gone through these. We've talked about how a city is set up. Was findet man in der Zentrum? Wir haben Marktplatz, Kirche und Rathaus. Wie verteidigt sich eine mittelalterliche Stadt? Do we know the word for wall? Mauer und Gräben. Mauer. Eine Mauer. Yeah. Gräben are ditches or moats. Hügeln. Hügeln are hills. Yeah. Flüsse. Flüsse are what? Rivers. So natural and man-made. Natürlich und künstlich Verteidigungs. Set this up so you can maybe, I could share screen, but I'd rather you get the experience that you're here. Okay, so wovon kommt Geld für die Städte? Where are we getting money? Salt, yeah, tax, yeah, Zula. I don't know what individual like income tax would have been like. I don't know the history of income tax or general taxes, property taxes in the Middle Ages, but we're getting a vast majority of our income that's both privately and publicly available through Zula, duties. So basically sales tax, import taxes. Money skimmed off to allow goods to be transported through an area. So wovon kommt das Geld? Let's go with Zula. Where else are we getting? Here, I'll zoom in. Income. Von aus dem Land, ja. So Landwirtschaft. Und natürlich, so natürliche Wirtschaft, that would be a simple way to maybe say natural resources. Zum Beispiel, ZB in German means zum Beispiel. Zum Beispiel is for example. Salt, gold, Silber, Eisen. Von Eisen und Kohle kann man Stahl machen. Man braucht Stahl. Ja, was ist Stahl? Nein. Stahl, Steel. Man braucht Eisen und Kohle. Iron. And Coal. Und davon kann man Stahl machen. Ja? Und andere natürliche Wertschöpfe. Von Salz kann man viel Geld bekommen und üblich reich sein. We talked about Hansestädte. What are a couple? Lübeck is our main Hansestadt. Hamburg, Bremen, Bruges, Riga, Kiel, Rostock. London participated as a partner city. But what was the main idea behind Hansestädte? What were they interested in doing? Trade and price fixing and mutual protection. Right? So these are cities with the empire didn't have its own functioning navy. The Holy Roman Emperor wasn't in the colonization business later in the 15th century. What we've got is our cities banding together for mutual protection as well as mutual enrichment. Why did cities develop at this particular time? Could you answer that in English generally? How's that a benefit? What's one way someone's benefiting? Anyone benefiting? Yeah. For the individual citizen, what's advantageous about moving to or being born in a city as opposed to being born in a village? Yeah. I mean, in the city, you would have people making rules for you too, and people in charge. Are you able to pursue whatever career you want?
No.
No! What?
You probably pursue more.
Right. Generally, that is a true statement. Let's talk about how you obtain a career at this time. Your book, here, let's share. Or I'll read and you guys can follow along in your own. We're looking at page 47. Page 46 wraps up talking about patrician families and the struggle that develops between what's called a patrician family and a burgher. Among the burgher, we have Handwerker, Arbeiter, Bauern. And in certain cities, the burgher are going to be more wealthy than the patrician families who are simply born of high status. And so they'll develop individual power struggles within cities who's more in charge of the government at different times. Most of the time we're having to come to a compromise. Down here at Das wirtschaftliche Leben im Mittelalter, let's talk about this concept. Durch die Städte entwickelten sich der Handel und die Geldwirtschaft. Das wirtschaftliche Leben war im Mittelalter genau durch Privilegien, durch Vorrechte geregelt. We have the economic life is dictated by privilege. It's not a free and open system. Living in a city gives you more self-determination as an individual citizen, but does not guarantee you really anything of the sort. Okay. Wenn eine Stadt das Marktrecht bekam, so wurden darin Märkte abgehalten. Wenn die Stadt das Stapelrecht hatte, so musste jeder durchreisende Kaufmann seine Ware zum Verkauf anbieten, bevor er weiterziehen könnte. Das Münzrecht bedeutete, dass die Stadt Münzen prägen durfte. What these all are privileges given by the emperor to cities directly, or if you're not in an imperial free city, by your king or duke or lord. And they all mean something different. You have to have the right to hold a market. And if you are not given that right, your market's going to be shut down. Many cities had yearly fairs, so there would be a calendar when you would have your fair in Nuremberg, and when you would have a fair in Augsburg, and when you would have a fair all over the place. In France and in Italy, different cities had their own fairs. They would last about a week. And that's how you would get movement of goods throughout all of Europe, or see fascinating imports from far out places through these week-long, 2-week-long fairs that would travel around. Durchreise into Kaufmann, seine Ware. So if you have the Stapelrecht, the right to staple, literally put your stamp on a box or on shipping, then if someone traveled through your town, they were required to stop and offer their goods for sale. And then Münzerecht gave your city the right to coin. Not every city had the right to coin. With that privilege, you have greater control over the price of goods and a variety of things. Die meisten Handelsverträge werden mündlich abgeschlossen. How are we getting Verträge, our contracts? Are they being schriftlich oder mündlich? Mündlich. Most contracts are verbal. Zwar richteten die Städte ihre eigenen Lateinschulen ein, but around 1340, we start to see universities develop. We already have some Latin schools, and we see wider use of things like reading and writing, lesen und schreiben, und auch Mathematik, zum Beispiel Rechnenkunst. Damit können wir besser Handel machen. We can do better economically, we can read and write and count. Dabei gehörte Ehrlichkeit zum Geschäft. You have to have trust in your business. Die Maße und Gewichte werden genau beachtet, and you have to be able to trust measures and weights. So we start to see a development of a system to measure and weigh things to build trust. Die Menschen können Vertrauen zueinander haben. Your book is making a general statement saying people can trust each other. Sure. Down on 48, auch das Leben der Handwerker hatten seine feste Regeln. Here's where we get into some points I like to make, is with the rise of Zimfta, and that word's defined over here to the side. Zimfta are guilds. Have you ever heard that word before? Can anybody describe what a guild does? Yeah.
You like get all the members of a trade or group together so they can organize, talk about what their fair prices are and things like that.
Yeah. How's that advantageous? How's that benefit the workers?
You can blame your prices on someone else.
Yeah. It reduces what? Yeah. How's that beneficial? I've always been told capitalism is great and competition's what drives it. Right. Well, it is anti-capitalistic to form, to have total control over an industry. But if you're all agreeing to set prices at a certain level, you don't have the risk of having to compete against someone who has greater access to resources, greater luck, greater ability than you even. And you're less likely to go bankrupt or not have access to markets if you're all agreeing to work together. If somebody or groups of people don't abide by that agreement, it falls apart eventually. But yeah, we see this in basically every industry. So if you make barrels, the only way to become a barrel maker is to enter into and continue and pursue and then become master in the barrel making guild. Same thing goes with the copper pot maker or a cobbler. What's a cobbler make? Shoes, yeah. Or a tanner. What do tanners do? Yeah, tan skins. Or a Schneider. Schneider is a German occupation. You cut clothes, you tailor, right? Every occupation you can think of, from rope maker to, what's another to fishmonger, is gonna have a guild. Who's allowed to enter into that is a tricky thing. Who decides who's allowed to enter into that, first of all, are the guilds. It's a closed system of entrance and work. So here it describes that process. Der Handwerker begann als Lehrling. Als Lehrling. So let's write these down real quick. Lehrling. Ling, Lehrling. Und what's it lernen mean? To learn? An apprentice, yeah? An apprentice. So you, in order to enter into a guild, you have to first start as an apprentice. Nach mehreren Jahren werden genug gelernt hatten, werden Geselle. So the next step after entering a guild is Geselle. Anybody have family members in a guild? They still exist. Electricians guilds and plumbing guilds. What do you do after you're an apprentice? There's 3 steps still. You're classified as a journeyman. And in that name, we see a little bit of meaning that doesn't want to exist. There we go. Whoops. A gazelle, in the name journeyman, we see a little bit of what you are required to do. Würde ein Gazelle müsste wandern. What do you have to do as a gazelle? Travel, right? Why? From whom? Right? When you can't spread knowledge through YouTube videos or books, or even you have rare encounters where you talk to other people, part of the requirement along of the career path of pretty much every occupation is to go to another city or region and work for someone else. You'd be accommodated, paid a meager wage, but you gain experience. You also share with them what you've learned as an apprentice back home, okay? This furthers and fosters connections among cities, right? It's good for trade in that way. But it's a slow move towards becoming the last step of meister. Meister is our 3rd step. And it takes often decades to become meister. What's meister? Master. And that's a specific process of being certified as a master barrel maker or a master baker even. The bakeries are gonna have guilds. A master shipbuilder and all the different parts of a ship. You're gonna have different guilds coming together to work on those. Who gets to become an apprentice is part of the ways that this is a closed system. Doch die Zahl der Meister war für jede Stadt beschränkt. In every city, the number of meisters is determined by the meisters. So let's take our barrel maker guild, for example. The barrel maker guild might have 5 meisters in it, 5 master barrel makers that all agree on how many barrels they're going to make and how much they're going to charge, and they live a great life. But they're going to say there can only be 5 barrel makers in this town. And if we ever need 6, we'll come together and agree on that. So if there's a gazelle, if there's a journeyman barrel maker in town who marries, the fishmonger's daughter, he might never have the opportunity until one of those people dies to become a meister. You have to wait. A great way to become a meister without having to wait too long is to marry the barrel maker's daughter, who will then see you as part of the family and elevate you to meister while maybe retiring. It's a complicated and very, it relies a lot heavily on relationships, yeah? Viele Gesellen könnten also nie Meister werden. Most of the time, the person who becomes Meister is either the son or stepson of the other Meister. It says in your book, and many journeymen never become Meisters. Die Handwerker des gleichen Gewerbes wohnten oft in der gleichen Straßen. It's telling you that usually they lived on the same street. That's where you get different names of places like Bäckerstraße or Schuhmacherstraße, who are Bäckers. bakers. Who are shoemakers? Shoemakers. What's a butcher? That's probably our older word for Metzger or Fleischer. Or no, a butcher might be something else. I'll have to look. Oder Gerberstrasse. What's a Gerber do? It says over here, those are tanners. So if you know someone named Gerber with the last name, or Gerber Baby Products, that's an occupational name for somebody who tans skins. Die Letztere liegt gewöhnlich am Wasser, wo die Gerber die Häute einweigten. So you have Gerber streets usually on the water because that's where you'd have to soak the skins, very smelly process. Vielleicht stellten die Handwerker ihre Arbeit zusammen aus, die Preise waren festgelegt, ebenso die Zahl der Gesellen und Lehrlinge und die Meister nehmen könnte. Die Konkurrenz war also begrenzt. Competition is highly regulated and constrained. Let's see, auch die Kaufleute hatten ihre Gruppe, ebenso die Seeleute. Die Gruppen hatten ihre eigenen Gasthöfe. Sie hatten ihre eigenen Kirchenstühle. Ja, wenn sie reich waren, ihre eigenen Kirchen. So it's even talking about these societies being organized where you have social groups, you have eating facilities, you have meeting facilities. You also even have churches being built for and by trade groups, and you still see these in different cities throughout. In churches that maybe were the main church in the town, you'd have at least pews set aside for the individual trade groups. Der Transport war dieser Zeit schwierig und gefährlich. Die Schiffe waren klein und dem Land dauerte lange und vor allem Grenzen. Bei allen Flussübergängen und Städten musste man Zoll bezahlen. Here's the primary point. Transport was hard. And we talked about what you needed to be able to do in order to move stuff around. Is it practical to load up a wagon full of turnips in München and transport those to Strasbourg and try and make a profit? Why not? What else is going to prevent you from making a profit off your wagon of turnips? You might get robbed. Yeah, that would be tragic.
They might go bad.
Right? They're not a durable good. What do you think?
They have turnips there too.
Yeah, they got turnips there. Yeah. Have you ever heard the term of a value-added good? How do you add value to a good? What's an example of a value-added good? If I have honey, for example, I have a beehive. Yeah, honey has not had value added to it. I can sell honey for a nice price. Honey's delicious. What can I do to my honey to add value to it?
It's the only honey.
I could kill all the other bees.
Make it rare.
Make it different.
Make what?
Different.
I could cream it. Have you had
Yeah.
creamed honey? I could make candles.
Make it unique.
I could make mead, right? And drink from it. What can I do to, for example, I don't know, if I have gold, can I sell gold for a decent price? Yeah. What can I do to make my gold more valuable? I can make jewelry. That's a value-added product, right? You're taking something and adding value to it. Corn in your fields out here. It's valuable on its own, but the price per bushel is lower than if you turn it into, what are we doing to all our corn? Yeah, we're making gas. And there you have a value-added product. Plus you have a bunch of subsidies that helps too. You can make it into corn syrup, sell that to every food manufacturer in the world, make a lot more money. Yeah. Cornbread is, it's a good cornbread. It's good cornbread. Honey butter. So you need to have something valuable enough to transport. Die Waren müssten also sehr wertvoll sein, wenn sie sich lohnen sollte, sie zu transportieren. They had to be valuable to make it worth transporting. We're okay. Brad dropped his laptop. So with iron and coal, natural resources, you can turn those into Waffen, make some weapons, transport those. With animals as a natural resource, you can hunt them and use their skins to make furs, right? Schmuck. Schmuck is jewelry. Kostbare Stoffe und Spritzen. With textiles, with sheep, you can shear them and make things like wool and textiles. And what do you make lace from? You need cotton? Silk, maybe. I don't know. We don't have a lot of silk trading going on. That would have to come from the East for a while. Ebenso wichtig waren die Gewürze. So spices become incredibly important. And we talked about salt already. We talked about Pfeffer. Pfeffer is so important coming in from the East that a lot of the salespeople who travel around are called Pfeffersäcke, so pepper sacks. Die Speisen was very spiced. The food was heavily spiced by our taste. Mostly, maybe they preferred food to be like that. Other theories are it was usually partially spoiled, and that would help out. As far as drinks, das Wasser ist, ja, nicht immer gut. So man trinkt viel Wein, später auch Bier, ja, und es wurde viel Fleisch gegessen. Zur Fastenzeit brauchte man dafür Ersatz, und so wurden getrocknete oder gesalzene Fische gehandelt. The medieval Christians in Germany, at least, they ate a lot of meat, but during fasting times, and there were more times for fasting then than now, they would eat fish instead because fish isn't meat, right? According to Ron Swanson, yeah? It's basically a vegetable. Im 14. und 15. Jahrhundert stieg der Wohlstand in den deutschen Städten. Mit dem Wohlstand stiegen die Aussprüche. Wohlstand is prosperity. And so we see a climb in prosperity across Europe from the 14th to 1500s. And you see a rise in expectations. People want more beautiful and more comfortable places to live. So we have walls being covered with paintings. We have clothing becoming more extravagant. Books are starting to become a little bit more widespread in the 1500s, 1600s. But before that, they do become collector items and signs of great wealth because of their rarity and also beauty inside the books. Durch die wachsende Geldwirtschaft werden die sozialen Unterschiede in den Städten immer größer. So we start to see wealth inequality rise, social differences rise between rich and poor, high status, low status. Werden zu Lohnarbeitern und neben die reichen Kaufleute traten die reichen Industrienherren. Das war keine Industrie mit Maschine, doch hatten die Textilwirtschaft, so goes on to talk about stratification. Many people on the bottom of the social status become indentured servants. They owe a debt now and have to pay for that with their work. It talks about in 1515 in Joachimsthaler, if you are in control of mining resources, you can rise to great power. In Bohemia, there's one particular silver coin called the Thaler that becomes the official money of the empire. And that's where we get the word dollar von der Vereinigten Staaten. Fun fact of the day. The word dollar comes from the word Thaler. Tal is a valley. And this would be what they called the silver used in the Holy Roman Empire from a valley in Bohemia. Okay, let's move on. Adel and Bürgertum. This goes into detail on the differences between Adel. Who are the Adel? Fürsten, nobles, yeah? Bürger are the citizens. And it talks about, Sie müssten immer höhere Preise To be as je mehr die Bürger zu Wohlstand kamen, desto schlechter ging es den adligen Herren. This first sentence here. Je mehr die Bürger zu Wohlstand kamen, desto schlechter ging es den adligen Herren. Let's just look at this two-word combo, desto schlechter. I love it. It's one of my favorite turns of phrases. Desto schlechter ging. What we're saying is, je mehr die Bürger zu Wohlstand kamen, as more Bürger came to prosperity, desto schlechter ging es den adligen Herren. Can we break down that second phrase? Desto schlechter, what schlecht? Bad. Even worse, ging es den adligen Herren. So for all the rise in prosperity for regular citizens, the nobility, it's usually going worse when that happens. They had to pay higher prices for weapons. So if cities are growing and blacksmiths guilds are becoming stronger and making better products, they control the prices. And if you are in control of like the countryside here in Schwaben, you're gonna have to pay higher prices for better weapons. And that hurts your bottom line, no matter how wealthy you are. Because your main products, your main wealth source is what as a landowning aristocrat or nobility? Your land, yeah? Turnips, cows, the food that comes from the land, or the right to travel through it. So it becomes more difficult to do things like wage war. We won't get into the details of war here. Die Stellung der Ritter. Knights have it particularly tough. Some of them move to the city, keep their titles, but just become citizens. Others go around robbing people because they still have armor and pointy swords. And they would rob Kaufleute, merchants who are underway, and take either their goods or their cash. Let's see. Keep it moving. This goes into the poetry of the time, the art of the time. Die meisten Künstler. Let's talk art real quick. Who's hiring artists? Yeah, you can be hired to create art. Who else is in the art business? The church, right? These are two main outlets for artistic expression. To be an artist, you have to be in a guild, the Artist Guild. You have limited access to becoming an artist, and there are different certifications. Most artists at the time specialize in a particular art form. So whether it's goldsmithing or what could you build and decorate in a church?
Ceiling.
Yeah, the glass, stained glass manufacturing. That's a good one. Right? You could architecture, yeah, and make buttresses. Or decorate. Most of the time you see art coming as, the word's missing right now. The altar pieces to hang behind the priest while he's preaching. Some years we have more time to go into the differences between the shifts in architecture. What's our primary architectural style springing up? Gothic. Do we know at least the difference between Gothic and Romanesque? Just basic? No? That's okay. Arches. It comes down to arches, right? If we think, and Romanesque doesn't come about until the fall of Rome as a Central European architectural style. But what can we do with an arch? Why is an arch nice? Right? It's strong. You can build on top of it. I can build a church by doing a series of arches, build that in. I can even build on top of that. This is our Romanesque style. You typically see it with smaller sections built on top. Usually in the shape of a cross, you'll have a rounded area out here with the altar. And then oftentimes on this end, or sometimes on this end, a tower built on, you guessed it, arches. Yeah. This style would be Romanesque. This is most popular from 600. You see a Romanesque cathedral in Trier, one of the old Roman cities of Germany. From 600 till, I mean, it kept going, and then you see a revival of it. But earlier churches, 600 to 1100. What becomes appealing about Gothic architecture? What can we do differently as opposed to this? What? Yeah. This is allowing it, this is still very strong. It puts our focus of pressure, because stone as a building material is very heavy. This could collapse. But we're allowed to let a lot more light in. We think Gothic, we think dark and spooky, but really the whole goal with these big windows is to let in more light and to make the church a place you want to go and visit. If you have heard about a church in a different city, it might be your lifelong dream to go and see it. And you can build up. You can even build these quite tall. And then how do we support that? Buttress, yeah? The buttress comes out, gives extra support here. They're considered flying because you decorate the tops here. And these are almost always going to be in the shape of a church, of a cross from above. See lots and lots of those. But you get the gist. You can build just as tall with less stone than this, and you get these great, massive facilities that you can only imagine. Like if you've never left your town or your region and you go inside of one, you're filled with a sense of awe and inspiration. Okay, so those also need to be decorated. You also see civic buildings being decorated, Rathaus, marketplaces, fountains. Cities start to reinvest their wealth into their communities. Okay, Hausmarkt, we'll skip over that. Not really much we need to go through, other than talks about the political changes. Österreich, do you want to talk about Austria? Me neither. Universitäten talks about just different universities that get founded in the 14th century. Heidelberg, Köln, Wien, Erfurt, Rostock, Basel, Tübingen, Freiburg. Many of the oldest universities in Germany are founded in the 14 and 1500s. Okay, let's talk about Lebenslust und Totentanz. Der Lebensstandard in den Städten stieg, während auf dem Länder sank. So, quality of life, and I'm looking here where it says Lebenslust und Totentanz. Quality of life is better where? In the city or in the country? In the city. In the city. Why? Access to stuff. Do we have doctors? We have people trying. Yeah, I've got this book back here called Life in a Medieval City. See if I can find it. Yeah. Talks about, ooh, it's right there. It talks about going to the doctor. So, at the patient's house, the well-advised doctor conducts himself with a certain ceremony. In the sick room, he bows, seats himself, and drawing a sandglass from his bag, takes the patient's pulse. So that's something you might do. He requests a sample of urine, which he sniffs and tastes for sugar. That would be a good indicator, yeah. In case of a gross infection, he examines the urine for sediment. He inquires about the patient's diet and stool, and then delivers a discourse on the disease. The stomach, he may explain, is a cauldron in which food is cooked. If it is filled too full, it will boil over and the fill will remain uncooked. The liver supplies the heat for this interior furnace. The humors must be kept in balance. Phlegm, blood, bile, and black bile, cold and moist, hot and moist, hot and dry, or hot and dry. Fevers are tertian, quatern, daily, hectic, and you get the gist. There's a mix of good science and not so good science at the time. Well, this book talks about being a doctor in the Middle Ages being a lot of luck and showmanship. Yeah, you tell your patient that they're dying every time. Why? No, because well, if they do, then you're off the hook, and if they don't, you're the best doctor in the world. Yeah. Always tell them it doesn't look good. So keep on moving through here. Aber der enge Kontakt brachte auch solchen Krankheitsepidemien. Die schlimmste war die Pest 1350. So, Pest. 1350 is maybe, I mean, we see it starting before that in 1347. How's the plague spread? Not the rat's fault. The fleas.
The rats spread it.
So could cats, so could cows.
But there's more rats. It's their fault too.
Have you seen the Remy short about?
No, it's over TikTok.
No, but there's like an 8-minute short cartoon where Remy defends rats and how they were blamed for the plague. Die Pest führte zu religiösen Massenbewegungen und Exzessen. Etwa der Bewegung war der Flagellenten, der Geistler. Opfer des religiösen Fanatismus wurden vor allem die Juden, die in den deutschen Städten lebten. So, your book's talking here on what page? 54. A widespread plague. Do we have any idea how many people this is? The Black Death, 1348. How many people are dying? 1/3. Yeah. Population was what, 60 million in Europe. First of all, if you're a worker, this is making you much more valuable, which is great. There's an economic aspect because there are fewer people to do any jobs, but you can't really move about without any sense of fear that you might contract this deadly disease. Do we have an idea of what the bubonic plague does to people? How? What is it, a virus or a bacteria? It's bacteria, yeah. And it does mess with your respiratory, gives you a very high fever. You have these outward, things start to be, what's the word? Yeah, but there's a medical term for when that happens. And you get boils, which are grotesque and ugly. And you can expire in a very short period of time. And during that entire process, all the way up until burial, you are infectious and capable of spreading the disease to others. It's very bad. This leads to a lot of not just social excesses where people are thinking carpe diem, right? Or what was it? YOLO. Yeah. Yeah. I always thought YOLO should be about responsible behaviors, right? Buckle your seatbelt. YOLO. Right? Eat a balanced diet. YOLO. Not like jump off this cliff. YOLO. Anyway. We also, so have you ever heard of these people, the Geistler? They went around self-flagellating. No? In cities throughout Europe, as the Black Death is moving through, many thought they were personally responsible through their sin for the plague spreading. You start to see supernatural explanations for a virus, a bacterial infection no one understands. And so part of what the attempt is to rid themselves of sin by taking a stick with chains. At the end of those, you have ball bearings, essentially, with small spikes in them. And either alone or together with some other weirdos, you walk through the streets, whipping the back of your back and pulling up.
Oh.
Your pain is purifying not only yourself, but the rest of the town. You're doing it for them. Yeah, bitter. So, have we seen throughout history when terrible things happen, a search for blame? Yeah. Yeah. In den deutschen Städten am Rhein, so we see religious fanaticism spilling over vor allem zu die Juden. Who are they? Yeah. Where are the Jews living? We haven't talked about the Ashkenazi, primarily Jews. Anti-Semitism, I've said this before, is nothing new. Yeah. During 2,000 years ago, the Jews were spread out throughout Europe by different Caesars. Some went to like as far away as Baghdad and lived there for centuries. You have Jews sent to Spain, to Portugal, basically all throughout the Roman Empire. That was seen as their best way to prevent further Jewish revolts, which were happening in high frequency around the 1st and 2nd century. Main idea here, spread everybody out and you'll have less revolts. It's easy, they saw it as easier than just massacring everyone. You have many Jewish families ending up in what's then the Holy Roman Empire and in imperial cities. What were Jews allowed to do that Christians were not as a source of wealth? Banks, yeah? Specifically, what about banking? Is it practical just to have money and give it to people and then they give you the money back? Is that a viable business? Charging interest, right? You get money back for not having your money for that period of time, yeah? And it's called, referred to sometimes as usury, but this is frowned upon by the church. So Jews are allowed in fairly high frequency in basically every city and region, because as more and more people are looking for things like pepper, you need capital to finance a trip to go and find some pepper, right? You need capital to move goods and services up front before you can, you need capital even to transport salt, because you're gonna have to carry some cash with you before you can get there and sell it, okay? Any sort of business venture requires some money up front, so you need banks, yeah? Are all Jews in Europe wealthy and bankers? No! We have Jews throughout all the social classes. The vast majority are in what social class do you think? The proletariat, yeah? What's the proletariat? You've heard that word before. The working class, people who go out and do stuff, yeah? You also see Jews involved in merchant. Jews are excluded from guilds in many places in Eastern Europe at the time. They're excluded from guilds in many guilds in Germany, only a few they're allowed to participate in. So you have particular businesses having more Jewish representation than others. As the plague hits, we see some rumors being spread. The first of these come about in Strasbourg, are some of the most popular. Strasbourg's here, right along, close to the Rhine. It's now French, it's been German, it's kind of both. And the rumor is that Jews have been going around poisoning the wells and therefore causing the plague. What this leads to is mobs forming in Strasbourg. And then as word of this spreads, they interrogate the Jews in the town and get forced confessions by these people saying that, yes, indeed, they poisoned the wells, and it was all part of a plan, and they're going to do more of it. As the news of this spreads, and even in Strasbourg itself, the mayor intervened to try and prevent the population from widespread violence. The mayor was kicked out of town himself, and in 1348 in Strasbourg, about 3,000 Jews were either forced to convert or burned alive. This is happening all throughout the Rhineland. Here's some source from Black Death and the Jews, 1348. We can read a couple of these accounts. Devastating plague killed off ultimately 25 million people. Let's go down. Here's from the confession of Agumet of Geneva. This is in Geneva, close by to Strasbourg in October. Let's see. On Friday, in the castle thereof, there occurred the judicial inquiry, which was made by the order of the court and his subjects against the Jews of both sexes who were imprisoned, each one separately. This was done after public rumor had become current and a strong clamor had arisen because of the poison put by them into the wells, springs, and other things which the Christians use, demanding that they die. And they are able to be found guilty and therefore that they should be punished. Hence, this is the confession made in the presence of trustworthy persons. Agumet, the Jew who lived in Geneva, was arrested at Kassel and there put to torture a little, and then he was released from it, just a little. And after a long time, having been subjected again to torture just a little, he confessed in the presence of a great many trustworthy persons who are later mentioned. To begin, it is clear, so moving on a little, sent this very Jew to Venice to buy silks and other things for him. When this came to notice of the rabbi, the Jew of Chambéry, who was the teacher of their law, he sent for this Agumet for whom he had searched. And when he had come before him, he said, "We have been informed that you are going to Venice to buy silk. Here I'm giving you a little package of half a span in size, which contains some prepared poison and a venom in a thin sewed leather bag, distributed among the wells, cisterns, and springs about Venice and the other places to which you go, in order to poison the people who use the water of the aforesaid wells that have been poisoned by you," namely, okay. So what happens the next year in Strasbourg, that was in Geneva, led to a lot of deaths. In Strasbourg on Valentine's Day, that's when we have Jews being pulled from their homes, forced into confessions, or burned. In this matter of the plague, Jews throughout the world were reviled and accused in all lands of having caused it through the poison which they are said to have put into the water in the wells. And accused for this reason, Germans were burnt all the way from the Mediterranean into Germany, but not in Avignon, for the Pope protected them there. The Pope even tried to intervene to stop this from widespread murder and persecution of Jews from happening, and said that these rumors were false. They've been taken under torture and spread unwisely, and it didn't really matter. Okay, so talking even more, it was decided in Strasbourg that no Jew should enter the city for 100 years. After 20, they reconvened and said, oh, we can let a few in. That was in 1368. And from that point on, most cities had imperial cities had laws against Jews living in the city, except for a few families who were only permitted to work in what profession? Banking. The proletariat, what happens to them? Yes, where are most of the victims from the Holocaust? Poland, 1 million Polish Jews killed during the Holocaust. About another 800,000 from Ukraine. We have hundreds of thousands from Lithuania and Latvia. That's where part of my family was centered here in Lithuania. Germany, the proletariat, the poor Jews, 1348, need somewhere to go. They've already been sent out much earlier in England due to just general anti-Semitism. In France, we see Jewish expulsions earlier, migrating to Spain. Many of those are pushed to North Africa. Some flee to the New World as that's opened up from Portugal. But the ones who are kicked out of England and France go to Germany and are allowed to live mostly within the empire. As we get into 1348, almost all of those are kicked out, and Casimir III of Poland is generous enough to allow them to settle there. Have you ever heard of Yiddish? What's Yiddish? Why do the Polish Jews speak German and Hebrew? Because they started here, were kicked out in 1348, en masse migrated to Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, the territories of Poland, Lithuania under Casimir III. Why blame the Jews?
They did the same thing.
You can understand the panic, right? You can understand the fear. Can you understand the debt? When the only person, let's say, when the only person who's allowed to have debt, and you have debt, is now being targeted for mass murder, right? We're talking 25 million deaths. How convenient would it be if they all disappeared? What would happen to your debt? It would also disappear. I don't know, yeah. If Iowa Student Loan got accused of the coronavirus, I might go and ask them about it. Yeah, I owe them some money, and I will for a long time. But if they were found out to be spreading a disease, I don't know what I do. You get my drift here? There's more to it than just Jews are bad, right? Or there have been rumors about Jews spreading disease or kidnapping Christian babies to sacrifice for their blood. We are even seeing that again online, that people are going around kidnapping children to steal their blood, in essence. That's just the blood libel against the Jews going back 1,800 years. Okay, these are not new rumors or conspiracies. The reason the victims of the Holocaust are in Poland and Lithuania goes all the way back to the Black Death. And Strasbourg, where 2,000 Jews are murdered on Valentine's Day, is not a unique situation. This is happening all up and down the Rhine, in Italy, in Venice, and in Switzerland, in France. And this forces mass exodus and expulsion. Questions? It's also where we get Yiddish.
I love Yiddish.
I do too. Cheers.